the MS Michigan Man 64 podcast. My name is Brian Wallace, and I am the MS Michigan Man 64. The MS Michigan Man 64 podcast is about chronic disease awareness. I have had multiple sclerosis for the last 27 years. It's an invisible chronic disease that I've been battling for half of my life. I want to share with you what it is like living with the chronic disease from my experiences and the experiences of other chronic disease warriors. We can fight to have a voice to those that want to listen. Together, we can motivate and educate. Hi, and welcome to the MS Michigan Man 64 podcast. So today I am really excited to have this guest on. She is the spouse of an MS warrior. She's been with this guy for 22 years. He started out with relapse remit. It has progressed into primary progressive. But the great thing about Ms. Schneider is that she is a medical lab scientist, which means she's very, very intelligent. And she used her intelligence to help her husband with his battle with MS. So with that being said, I want to introduce you to Ms. Schneider. How are you doing today, Ms. Schneider?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Brian, for having me on.
Oh, not a problem, not a problem. So, Ms. Schneider, you have a husband that has multiple sclerosis. And the thing that I really like about after I met you and getting to know you is that you really attacked this disease to try to help your husband. And can you kind of explain like the research that you have put into the MS and the information that you have put on your website, just to start it out, and then we'll get into all the other great things that you have.
Okay. Well, first off, I'd like to say I'm not a doctor. I'm a medical lab scientist. That's my degree. So I'm not dispensing medical advice. What I'm giving you is research. And the paper I have is based on research that you print the entire thing with the references and give it to your doctor so you can do testing and appropriate treatment with your doctor. So having said all that, so we've been married for 22 years. He's had MS for 20. Initially, when reading a lot of information, because he had 3 relapses in about 10 and a half months, I think they would have actually considered him progressive right away if we had not made the changes we had made. So in that 10 and a half months, he had 3 relapses and he'd been put on steroids twice. And after 10 and a half months, he was, getting very dejected because of how it was progressing. Right. So I'd been reading about things like the National MS Society had put out, if you have remittent relapsing, which is where he started out, that 25% of your symptoms are inflammation related. So I was doing things like, okay, well, let's not spur the immune system unnecessarily with like allergens, and let's try to reduce, things like sugar or inflammatory, more plant-based diet, which I think now is more commonplace than it was way back then. And then we ended up, I looked into things like the B12, which is required for the myelin. That's what's being deteriorating in the disease. And so you can't rebuild a brick house if you don't have bricks. So for some people, when they're going through the differential diagnosis, that's actually what they find is that they have, let's say, an intrinsic factor problem in their stomach, and they can't absorb the B12. So they actually need injections. It bypasses the problem. And then guess what? They don't actually have MS. They have a B12 deficiency. For some other people, they have Guillain-Barré. Some people have lupus. They do an ANA test, right? And they do the differential diagnosis. For him, he had optic neuritis a little bit. He had a number of different issues that right away got him diagnosed. But in that first 10 and a half months, I took out sugar, like really reduced the sugar, right? There's some sugar, more like in fruits or vegetables, and reduced the gluten. I basically had a gluten-free diet for a couple of years, and then got rid of the dairy. And he ended up within 7 weeks lost 15 pounds. He went a mile faster for a mile longer on the treadmill, and with dramatically less foot drop. So, before that period, he would foot drop every 2 or 3 footsteps. After that 5-week period, he'd only foot drop once the whole night. And
Yeah.
I was watching because I was like, oh my God, that is a huge difference. And then he
Yeah.
went 4.5 years without a relapse, where he was relapsing
Wow.
everything prior to. Now, we did put, B12, the vitamin D, right? All these different things that way back when they really didn't talk about vitamin D,
Right.
right? There was some PubMed research on that. And so we did that, and that was good. But, over time, he has progressed, right? And there has been, we moved, and that was actually when he relapsed. Right. So he
Yeah.
was moving out of state, different job, different, like everything. And, stress and autoimmune diseases, doesn't go
Huge.
together.
Huge. Yeah.
So we ended up, we'll talk about the other thing I did later, but
Yeah.
I put together a paper because when I was going through medical lab, to get my degree, I did a couple things. One, I actually was in a research class, and the paper I did was so good. My teacher used part of her stipend, and we actually had it published in a medical journal, and it was with curcumin, because I have Crohn's,
Yeah.
and how it could be a complementary therapy and possibly even increase the length of time that Remicade was effective in people. And it's over the counter and cheap. And by the way, while Remicade has all these terrible side effects, like I had gotten lupus-like symptoms, curcumin doesn't have any of these side effects. It also, instead of just reducing TNF alpha, which is what Remicade does, it reduces TNF alpha, IL-2, IL-1, like a dozen different inflammatory sites. And why am I bringing this up a little bit? One, so you do know I have a medical background. I have been published in journals. They don't just let you do that.
Right.
And that, by the way, curcumin might actually be something really good for a lot of these autoimmune diseases, because it's actually good for your liver and it reduces the inflammation, which we know is a part of all these processes, right? If you have damage at the body, which autoimmune does, you're going to have inflammation. So this is really something that, and my husband definitely takes that as well. But I had him tested. It was an immunology class. And so in immunology class, you get a lot of information that people just don't generally have. And so it talked about how, you treat horses, not zebras, which just means the rule of thumb is if 95% of people get it, it's probably that. It's not the zebra. But in an autoimmune disease, you're already dealing with the zebra. And so the way the immune system works is you have these antibodies. So if you get, let's say, a virus, you have this first responder. It comes out, it gets out. It's like there for a day or two and then out. So it's the paramedic. It drops you off to the doctors and nurses, and you have that other antibody. Now that's what is actually active for several weeks until your body can find something that is effective against, in this case, a virus. Okay. And then once it does, then that actually dissipates. And then you have what's called a memory or self-vaccination cell. And what it just means is that you keep one or two of these cells around so that if you ever encounter that particular foreign body again, you can very quickly just make a zillion of what we know works against it. You don't have to find it again. That's what takes the time, right? And so, and what is assumed is when you get to that memory cell, that, okay, now you've cleared that virus. But I was thinking, with my husband, a very, very common genetic disorder is something called hemochromatosis. And that's actually something in the gut that doesn't work correctly and you can't get rid of iron. And so you're higher in iron. For some people, they can clear a little bit, not much. Some people can't clear anything, right? So it's not just an on-off switch, okay? And for him, he had his ferritin tested and it's higher. That viruses need iron to replicate. And he's also an electrical engineer. He's, it's a stressful job that depresses your immune system. So now you're in a viral happy state where maybe you can't get rid of it. And I'm like, what if he couldn't get rid of it and it's still there? And so I had him tested for the antibodies and the virus, and he came back positive.
Got it.
And so what we were trying to do is find something that was effective against it. In the last 2.5 years or so, there's been research that has come out. It's paper, not me, saying the leading cause of MS is this. And in my mind, if we know that virus it's not the only cause, but the leading cause, then everyone who has MS, we should maybe have that looked at. And then something we didn't have at that time was, what are effective treatments against that virus? Because it's a tricky virus. You kind of think of it like your cold sores.
Right.
Okay, the symptoms, you got that blister, it comes out, well, then it goes away, and it comes back. Well, that's because it actually never really left. It's kind of latent, and it waits until your immune system is weak, and then it comes back out again. Well, that's happening in your brain, okay, because these viral particles are going up because you're not clearing it. As this virus is going up in the particles, you're also increasing the amount of antibodies. And in this virus, different. It's your antibodies that do damage to your body, which is MS. So can we, if we were to use effective therapies against that, then by reducing that viral load, reduce the damage that's being done and slow our diseases, and do it not with $80,000 DMDs, per year, but with, things that, antivirals are really low toxic in general, and they are way lower cost, right? And my proposal is I have a paper. It has multiple pages of references, okay? Because if you go to your doctor and go, this lady on the internet said, take this test and take, there's these things that are effective against this virus, they're not going to do anything. They have a license, okay? What you need to do is print out the paper that has several pages of virology, neurology, PubMed, JAMA, they are legitimate medical research journals, and say, here's where it's saying that this is the leading cause. So you know what I'd like to do? To a practitioner, I would like to have these couple tests done. And then I'd like to at least rule this out and have peace of mind. And if it comes back positive, it is a virus and it is positive. Now, here is research, general practitioner, that goes into here are different things, both through medication and through diet, that could possibly help me clear a virus. Okay. And then you go through with your doctor and you find what is correct for you. Now, what I'm saying with this is that if you are positive, you can do an additional test, which will quantify, which just means gives you a number, a baseline. So let's say that number is 100. And that's where your virus load is in the beginning. And you do whatever it is your doctor and you deem is appropriate for you. A year later, you come back and you look at that number. If that number is still around 100, what you did didn't work. Try something different. If that number goes down to 50, then guess what? The damaging antibodies are going down, and keep going, right? Because if there's still viral particles, you still have damaging antibodies. But at that point, maybe you can slow your progression of your disease, right? If that is what's contributing to your MS, which it is saying it's the leading cause of. I just don't see anybody talking about this. And I, on LinkedIn, there was the president of the National MS Society, and I said, Happy New Year. And I was like, by the way, why isn't this being put out? And he said, we are doing clinical trials now. That is one thought, that this is the process with MS, but we need more data before we can publish something along those lines. And my thing is, again, it's not a medication that's new and we're making people guinea pigs. It's, okay, if we know this virus is part of the issue, get the testing, determine if it is part of what's going on with you. If it is, then do the things that we know now. And some of these medications were not initially used for antiviruses. Okay, they were initially used for other things, which, one was a water pill. Okay, and they know now it's not just associated with lower EBV. They know it's called the mechanism of action, MOA. Okay, doctors love that. That is like, we know exactly how it's actually even working in your body to inhibit that virus or do whatever it's doing. So, but because the FDA has not yet cleared it for that purpose, the doctors are only going to do a special script. There's a special script you can ask for that allows them, because the research is saying it has the mechanism of action, this is actually working, that they could give this to you for that purpose. Okay. But they are going to need the research that says that before they will do that with you. Okay. So again, putting the paper together was really just, here's a really here's a list with the references of here's the testing. Find out if it applies to you. If it applies to you, then you can do these. You can talk to your doctor about doing these things that would be most effective against it. So, and again, we didn't get this information about what was effective for it until the summer, and so we're in process of trying to do some of these things right now. But
so tell me a little bit about, because I'm all for tools. Because you get diagnosed with a chronic disease, you get put on a DMT. All right, I'm on a DMT, but I'm still looking for tools to help me along the way. And what you're doing is an awesome tool. Talk to me about, because you have a website, lessbarriers.com. Go ahead and talk to me about your website. Your paper is linked to your website. So if people want to go and see all the tools that you have developed, they can go to your website. So kind of go into all that for me.
So www.lessbarriers, barriers.com, barriers.com. And go to, at the top, I think it's catalog. and
Mm-hmm.
you'll see a collection. You'll see we have you said you want to talk about this later, the movable wheelchair tray that I helped develop for my husband's wheelchair, and he
Yeah.
user tested it. And after 2 years, we're bringing it to market. But you'll see that, and then right below that, it says digital downloads. Okay,
Yep.
and when you click on that, there's a couple things we have right now, and one is MS, and that's exactly what I'm talking about here,
Yep.
which is the appropriate testing that you can talk to your doctor about, get a baseline. Okay, and there's one or two other tests that are very nominal costs that are very it's supporting information of what you're doing is actually working for you, because
Yep.
that's huge. Okay,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
maybe one thing works best for one person, but this might work better for someone else, and that
Exactly.
individualized. Yeah, and so and I think specifically because it has like something like 2 pages of references,
Mm-hmm.
it will make your doctor feel very comfortable that this is legitimate information,
I
so that
tell
you
you,
can.
I went on your website, after I met you and you were explaining everything to me. I went on your website, and that information is awesome. It is a great tool. I would, and I'm somebody with 27 years with multiple sclerosis, and I'm saying absolutely, it's a great tool. I am so glad that you were smart enough to actually put that together and share that with people. So I totally, totally recommend anybody listening to this to go to lessbarriers.com and check that tool out. It is a huge, huge thing. But now I want to talk about the other thing, and this is a thing that I'm really excited about that you did. Tell me a little bit what you came up with to help your husband after he, digressed into primary progressive, and now he's pretty much reliant on his wheelchair. I just want to talk because this part I love. I love the paper part, but I love this part too. So go ahead and start talking about this.
Well, the reason I like the paper is just because if we could, they are doing more clinical research, but clinical
Hmm.
research can take 8 years
Yeah,
very easily to get that done. And once it's
easy.
done, it's about an average of 17 years before when research is
Yep.
actually published to when it's used in a doctor's office. And
Yeah,
that's a whole other generation of people.
exactly.
Could we slow this disease down? So I'm excited about that possibly could help people. But the,
Oh,
the tray is the movable wheelchair tray we created. It's for my husband has actually 2 different wheelchairs. So one he bought off from a person who he had like a broke leg, and after 2 months he just didn't need it. It's an Invicare, very
hmm,
nice. But he also had another wheelchair. So one we keep always in the van, and one he would use at home,
hmm,
and that's a Drive
hmm.
Cruise 3. And so he was having issues where, when he was in a walker, he had a tray, and he would go up and
Hmm.
get his food out of a refrigerator, out of a microwave, do his own thing. And when he went to the
Yep,
wheelchair, it was like, okay, well, how do you get a bowl of soup?
on your
And
own,
you're
right?
laughing, and you're laughing, and you can't. And so, and we did get one of the trays that they had available. We weren't trying to reinvent the wheel. And when you put that on, okay, for him to go up into, getting in the refrigerator, he'd actually have to take it off to be able
Right,
to use it, but then you can't use it.
right.
So then there is no purpose to that. And then sometimes I like, okay, I'll set up his tray for, he can eat and watch some TV or whatever. And then, oh, I got to go to the bathroom, but then you got to backtrack to a table, take off everything, take off the
Yep.
tray,
It's
go
a
into the,
process. Yeah, it's a big
right.
process. Yep,
And then you got anxiety in the back of your head. Something's going to
yep,
happen.
yep.
And then because you have an extra 2 or 3 minutes, maybe something does happen. And that's another 45-minute problem. And at that
Hmm.
point, you just throw away the tray. And
Yep.
so we ended up, I'm like, this is something we can fix. We could, and this affects more than just you. And so
Yeah.
after about 2 years and lots of prototyping, we did 3D printing. So we actually, my husband's an engineer, so we had a 3D printer. So we just
It,
print
it's
some of that.
it's a
Now,
it's a benefit to be smart and have a chronic disease, I guess. I mean, it sucks getting the chronic disease, but at least if you are an engineer and you're a bioscience medical lab research, I mean, you guys are so damn smart. So go. Yeah, I'm sorry for interrupting. Go ahead, keep on going. I
you're
want to
fine.
keep. No, I don't know. I really like this product that you guys came up with.
So, well, we're hoping other people do too. But yeah, so we did the 3D printing for smaller parts of the tray, but the tray itself, and there's another part, they're too big for us to make on our residential printer. So we
Hmm.
had those 3D printed. Those are a little more expensive. And we had multiple prototypes of that. And
Right.
so as we went along, and like someone was like, could you take the rim off? And so we actually did that. And then when we did that, my husband, like, he'd have a plate and it'd fall off, or he'd
Hmm.
have a bowl. Well, then that's not going to work.
Right.
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 And so we went through, and yeah, after we have actually a front pocket to it, so you can, and it has dividers you can take out. So you can have
Yeah.
a phone or iPad or stand up silverware, which
Yeah.
allows you for easier grasping than on a horizontal surface. So the OTs that looked at it really liked it. Two outdents for whether it's, he puts his wine glass in there, or like his coffee cup, or, his water, thermos or
Yeah.
whatever. So it's, and for the way it works is this: you have like a clamshell and it goes on the bracket of your wheelchair, and it's a desktop length wheelchair.
Hmm.
And so this is Drive Cruise 3, 4, Silver Sports, Sentra, Invicares, the 9000 XTs, the Tracers, the Medlines. So
Hmm.
you just put that on there. It's very low profile, and you just leave it there. You can take it off
Yeah.
if you want for the rental, but like you can just leave it there and then use it.
Yeah.
And then it has a hole in it, and then we have a block and tray system. And the way this thing works is that you put it in place, and you can have it just like a tray and eat it this way if you want. Okay, I got to go to the bathroom right now. You don't
Hmm.
backtrack anywhere. It's the only thing I've seen where you go directly to the restroom, you
Yep.
slide it out of the way, you grab
Yep.
your grab bars, and you go. And the ham sandwich isn't on the floor,
Yep.
and so which is very nice for him. The other thing is that not only can you slide it in this direction, you can actually flip it so it's 90 degrees, and then it's a side tray,
Right.
and use
Right.
it as a side tray, whether
Yep.
you're standing up or sitting down. So he goes right up to the refrigerator, he'll throw his ham, it's bread,
I,
lettuce, mustard, right? And then he goes over and does something else. If he goes up to the microwave, because it slides back, you can go right up to the countertop. You're not
mhm.
like 12 inches away. Grab
Yeah.
your hot soup, put it on the side tray, not on your lap. Nothing gets spilled, nothing gets burnt. And then you take it over to wherever, or just use it to eat. Now, what he does actually is he doesn't eat in this position. He flips it 90 degrees this way, so it's actually coming towards his stomach.
Hmm.
So then the food doesn't drop all over his lap. It goes into the
Yeah.
tray. And
Yeah.
this is ambidextrous and height adjustable. So
I when I went on your website and I was looking at the tray that you designed, I was blown away. I'm like, my God, because I'm not in a wheelchair, 24/7 like a lot of people are with MS, but I do have a wheelchair, and I use it when I need to, and whenever I have to go, and if I'm out in the public, my wife has to carry things because there's nothing for me to put anything on that wheelchair. I mean, it gets me from point A to point B, but there's nothing. I mean, I have to depend on somebody else. And what you guys came up with would create me to be more independent. And that's what I love. I mean, when I looked at it, I'm like, man, this thing's awesome. Awesome.
that's why we went, the digital products I've created, which is, they're all referenced. Okay. And then the tray, the proceeds really for the first 3 or 4 years, we want to just reinvest in the company. Obviously, we have to back pay the plastic injection molders
Hmm.
for what we've done. But what I would like to do is actually have ideas for this. To actually, I have some other ideas to help other people in wheelchairs and in different wheelchairs types, right?
Yeah.
So, but I need funds to do
Sure.
that. So
Yeah.
that's just when you do buy stuff from us, that it is we do have to pay back what we've done, but we want the proceeds to actually go to other inventions we'd like to make and put out there.
Yeah, helping people. Yeah, you want to continue helping people. I mean, I get that, and it doesn't seem like, just from knowing you, you're not doing this for the money. I mean, you're doing this to help people, and I truly believe that. And everything that I've heard from you, talking with you, looking at the website, looking at the tools, the paper that you came up with. And I mean, you're the spouse of a warrior, and you just want to help us, and I love that. I love that, and I am all for anybody that wants to help people with multiple sclerosis, because there's people out there that want to help us a little bit more than others, and you are definitely one of them. And I really appreciate you so much for even wanting to come on my podcast and explaining all this. And you have so much knowledge, and I love talking to you, and I really appreciate you so much, Ms. Schneider.
Well, okay. Well, I mean, I think the smart people are the people who did the research papers and put this together. I think we have, I think I learned this year that there's a baseball player that made $700 million. And I look at our researchers and go, they don't get any accolades. They don't get a lot of pay. And here's a lot of information that 17 years after they get it done can actually be implemented to help people. And I just feel like I see the suffering goes on with the MS. And why can't we try to do something now with the information that they have put together? So I think something else too, just to put out there, and I have it in the paper, but is that as a lab scientist, and a lot of doctors may not even know this, okay, because a lot of doctors don't get a nutrition class, they don't get hormone classes, they don't get your microbiome classes. You get microbiology and parasitology and virology, but you don't get what good bacteria do and what feeds them, and which are prebiotics, and what chemicals they produce, which are postbiotics, and how that affects they don't have any of this information. And if you don't have a good gut, microbiome, that actually, there's only 2 cells difference between your gut and your immune system, and having it overreact. I have Crohn's, obviously. It's definitely something I've read a lot about. But as a medical lab scientist, you understand there's quite a bit that in the medical community you're not taught. And so, I'm going to say this, but your doctor may not know it, so don't get upset at your doctor, is that the normal ranges that your doctor gives you, which you get from the lab, okay, and they are accurate values, they are not based on a healthy subset of the population. They are not a standard of care. They change over time and they change over location. So, okay, when someone says, oh, I've looked into D, my doctor said I'm just fine. Okay, like in Michigan, when we had it done, I think the range was 23 to 50. When we were in Illinois, that range was 32 to 55. And I think in Texas, I've heard people say their range when they had it done was something like 40 to something.
So it changes from state to state, whatever region you're in. There's no flat line to it. It changes. So
what it's based on is 95% of the people in your area. And if you live in a sick area, that is a sick range. And in Michigan, we know we have higher rates of MS. We have higher rates of breast cancer. So, and in Texas, they have lower rates of MS. Okay. And so what does the research say? And so I actually put that out there. Okay. Is that research is saying that if and I don't care whether it's MS, lupus, RA, if you get your vitamin D levels up, you actually reduce disease activity. If you get it up high enough, you can reduce MS by 62%. If you get your levels to 52 or higher, okay, and we know up to 100 is safe. But, if it was 52 or higher, you reduce breast cancer in half, colorectal cancer in half. And at that rate, you can also be reducing your risk of MS by 62%. If you already have the disease, you reduce the disease activity. Okay. But in Michigan, you'd have to be in the top 5% of the population for most labs for you to get that health benefit.
Yeah, see, this is stuff that people just don't understand. I mean, me not being a scientist, you're teaching me something brand new today. Because I never knew this. And I'm sure that there's a lot of people that are in the same boat as me that have no knowledge of this. So this is just such an awesome tool to have. I love it.
But I had one of my husband had some issues. He had some clotting events in November. He had pulmonary embolism. And so he had an OT and PT come out and stuff. And one of them was looking at the stuff. And I actually gave her a copy of this MS document. And I've had a couple people who have medical degrees read over the paper because they had people they knew with MS, to try to help them. And she said something, and another person I gave it to, they said something, that when they reviewed the vitamin D stuff, which was before this virus information and the testing, both of them, I did not know that. I was taking it this way, which means my vitamin D wasn't effective for me at all. I'm like, and another person was like, I didn't realize I had to take it with this nutrient or I'd be at atherosclerosis risk. I mean, you want to reduce these things, right? But D increases blood calcium, and you don't want high blood calcium for a long period of time. Otherwise, you have atherosclerosis risk. So you want to reduce these risks and not have this additional risk, right? And so if you take that with K2, right? So, and I put this specifically in the letter, all your doctors are educated about K1, but they'll just say vitamin K. And that has to do with clotting. Okay. And that's your prothrombin times. Okay. So that's clotting events. But K2 is relevant to getting your blood calcium out of your blood.
Got
And
it.
they are not taught that. A lot of them are, is what I'll
Yeah.
say. And so I put that in there and go, here's some references to that if you want to look into that. But
Yeah.
because what this is meant for is that you print it off and you talk to your doctor, and so your doctor, right, if they have certain information and not other information, that's good for them to read that and go, oh, right, and they can look into that and make sure that that is true. But these are things that in total together, I hope this might help people slow their
Yeah.
disease process.
Absolutely. And like I said, we are always looking for ways to slow this progression down. I've been searching for 27 years, and I'm never going to stop. I mean, I'm on my DMT, but I still try to do little things just to make me feel a little bit better. And this is another tool, and I love it. I really, really, really appreciate you coming on with me and sharing your expertise. And like you said, you're not a doctor, and I know that you're not a doctor, but I'm still willing to listen to people that have knowledge, and you have knowledge, and I appreciate that.
Well, like I said, the information comes from PhDs and MDs who are putting out research,
Yeah,
and I'm just trying to put that in a way that you can understand it, that you could take it to your doctor,
yeah,
that is cited, so they understand that, hey, this is legitimate research, and maybe close that gap of that 17
yeah,
years between when the research is done and when it's implemented. Maybe we can make that be 3 or 4 years, right? And reduce the suffering, hopefully,
yeah,
because of
yeah.
that. That's what I'm hoping. But if you don't feel it pertains to you, then it doesn't. But I'm just hoping it helps someone.
It's a tool, and like I said, I'm all for tools. And I really appreciate you coming on, Miss Schneider. And if you want the 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 paper that Miss Schneider wrote, go to her website, lessbarriers.com. I will put it in the description down below. I'll put it in so you can just click on it. It'll take it right over there. And definitely, if you are reliant on a wheelchair, whether it be half time like me or full time, um, please check out that tray. It is so cool. I'm thinking about getting it, and it is. I just love the fact that you are 22 years with your husband, and you are just as much of a warrior and a fighter for him. And it's just awesome to meet you, talk to you, and learn so much more about MS just from talking to you. And I'm always for learning and keep on trying to fight this disease. And I really appreciate you for coming on and helping.
Well, thank you for having me. Because here's the thing: is you can have information, and if it's not shared, it doesn't do anybody any good. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, this is MS Michigan Man 64. I am going to get going. Don't forget to hit the follow button on down below, and I am on Instagram, MS Michigan Man 64, and also on Facebook. You can find me, Brian Wallace, out of Brunswick, Ohio. Follow if you have any questions for Ms. Schneider. You can put them in the comment section below. I will get a hold of her. I will definitely have her back on because I really enjoyed talking to her. I could have sat here and talked to her for another hour. But this is the MS Michigan Man 64, and I am out until the next episode.